Hello and welcome. I'm Annette Reeder from thebiblicalnutritionist.com. And today I have another interview with AJ Lanigan. AJ Lanigan went to school to be a pharmacist, but yet he has then moved into research. And his research has been greatly noted in science journals and PubMed and different things. He has also quoted a lot of the research from this scientist here. You can kind of see his name there. And what we're talking about is beta glucans, but here's what you really need to be understanding about this video you're about to see. He's going to share some new articles that have come out about cancer and the cancer risk and how we can actually help to prevent cancer. So instead of living in the diagnosis of cancer, I want to help you live in the prevention of cancer, which is pretty much what I teach all of the time. But most importantly, we're going to go into children's health. And that's what this video is focused on, is children's health. So if you're having allergies, or you're having autoimmune issues, or you're having RSV fears with your kids, stay tuned for this video. This video is a little bit longer in length than most of my videos, but please stay tuned till the end, because the information is very important for all moms, all teachers, all grandparents. We need to have this information for our children. Our children are living in such a horrific environment when it comes to immunity. And today we're going to teach you how to improve their immunity, therefore improve their response to whatever they come in contact with. Thanks again for watching. Now here's the interview with AJ. Well, AJ, it is a delight to be back with you again on our third video. For those of you who haven't caught the other two, be sure and see the links down below. Catch the other two videos. But even if you haven't, don't go away right now, because we're going to talk about kids' health today. And so, AJ, tell us what's going on in that arena today. What's on your mind today?
Well, Annette, we've got a strong lineup talking about children, whether or not you're a parent, a caregiver. In our area, school's just getting started back, and the kids going to be exposed to one another, and all the germs and all the viruses and all the stuff, notwithstanding COVID. All the chemicals that they've been cleaning with over the months, it's the same every year. They're going to bring it home. But before we do that, I'd like to just digress just for a moment and kind of tie together what we've done over the last couple of meetings, because this piece literally just came across my desk this morning from the Johns Hopkins. They got the Bloomberg School of Public Health is part of that group up in Boston, where they parked the cars. And it really pulls together a general message, and it has to do with being able to prevent cancer. Because again, there's no silver bullet out there that you can just say boop and cancer be gone. So getting ahead of that curve, not getting cancer to start with. And very straightforward information. They're saying that 44.4% of cancer deaths and 42% of healthy years are lost due to preventable risk factors. Simply say, almost half, over 40% of cancer deaths and over 40% of lost years, because you could have prevented the cancer. They highlight smoking, drinking, high body mass index as some of the leading factors. Well, we kind of know that smoking and drinking, I'm sure that you talk about not smoking and drinking quite a bit in your daily work. But here's the scary thing. The preventable cancer deaths have increased by over 20% over the last 10 years. Now, with all this war against cancer, with the moonshot, for Obama giving Joe a pile of money and said, go find, the cure for cancer, whatever. We're not doing a great job here. Some of this work, kind of getting into the deep weeds here, they don't even talk about that much exposure to sunlight. All these people running out and getting naked. I'm not that critical about people running out and being naked, but out there in the sun, there's some bad stuff that can happen if you get overexposed. They don't even get into a lot of that. They don't get into infectious factors like H. pylori, in the gut. They don't get that much into risky sexual behavior, maybe giving rise to HPV. So these are things that I think people need to realize. And I don't want to point fingers and say it's your fault that you have cancer, but this clearly says that a lot of these things, these risk factors, are things that you do have control over. And so you need to look in the mirror and say, what can I do to stay out of harm's way, particularly with cancer, infectious disease, and so forth. Again, we can't help that we live here on this planet and everything's trying to get us all the time, but we know that there are certain things that are much more dangerous than others. Talking about the sun, believe it or not, products in the marketplace. You go out and try to find a good sunscreen, and we find that benzene or benzophenones, which turn into benzene, is in a lot of our sunscreens. So again, these are things that, you read the label, you do a little bit of homework, and you leave those things on the counter. My mom used to put a little bit of zinc oxide ointment on my face. Got all this funny, greasy, white chalk looking stuff. And most people don't want to use that kind of sun protection. But I just wanted to bring this to the party this morning because, again, it's particularly bad when people are calling you that have cancer. And you say, well, give me a little background. Were you a smoker? How much, whatever. They're made to feel like it's my fault. Well, let's be honest with one another. There are some things, if they could have been prevented, maybe you did have a little something to do with that. But I will accept people cannot help that they're born into poor families. Kids cannot help that they're born into ignorant circumstances. Now, I don't equate ignorant with stupid. I'm just saying there are some people, some groups that seem not to embrace this kind of information. They don't find it that important. And of course, again, talking about somebody that's poor, they're struggling to put food on the table and to keep themselves and their family with a roof over their head and clothes on their back. So, I can't say that those groups are born with this or should be born knowing it. But if everybody does what they can do, then that group could become part of really more of a public health, I don't want to use the term program, but if you see someone doing something dangerous, you can enlighten them without insulting them. I know if I see a kid playing out in the middle of the street with cars going by, I'm not just going to keep walking. I'm going to tell the kid, to come on back up and don't be bending up the cars with their hard head. But
That's
anyway,
right.
I just wanted to kind of splash that because it ties in with what we've talked about over our last couple of visits. And again, this is brand new, fresh information that the numbers are not going in our favor. The numbers are going in the wrong direction in regards to, again, cancer deaths, numbers of lives lost on preventable causation. So let's concentrate on things again that we can control. The things we can't control, okay, let's let's just kind of keep them in the periphery. Let's focus on the things we can control. And a lot of things we've mentioned here, you focus certainly on the food, the diet, and other things connected with it. So let's focus again on those things.
All right. Thanks for sharing that study. I always have heard in the past, though, that the number was actually higher, where you're saying 44% is preventable. In the past, I heard it was actually higher, but I feel like they don't really want people to understand how much control they have over their health. And I feel like that's part of the medical industry is like, it's, there's nothing you can do about it. It's genetics, but yet we determine by how we care for our body and those risk factors, how those genetics are expressed. And so would you agree with that?
Well, I think you're not wrong about numbers that you've seen, that are higher. In fact, in this study, they don't include, again, things like too much sunlight. They don't include infectious disease giving rise to cancer such as H. pylori in the gut. They don't get into risky sexual behavior giving rise to things like HPV and others. So there were a lot of categories that were not included, which obviously would have driven this number higher. But I guess they just kind of run out of money, run out of time. But they concentrated only on these three areas: smoking, drinking, and the high BMI, or body mass index. So you're right. A lot of other things added into this would have definitely driven those numbers further in the wrong direction.
Right. And so today we're focusing on children's health, and children are the recipient of those behaviors. And most importantly, you don't get a high BMI without including pesticides, processed foods, and other contributors. That's how the high BMI happens. And then we have children walking around now with a high BMI. So when I went to school, we could all figure out, we all knew there was only one person that was overweight in the entire school. And that's the entire school. Now today, you have over 50% of children who are overweight. The other statistic that really bothers me is we no longer have rare diseases in children. We now have rare good health in children because rare diseases are no longer rare. They are very rampant. We have children from the moment of conception are already in almost a negative state as far as their immune system. And I realize they're very in a controlled environment. But when they're born, we're realizing, wow, they have this deformity, that deformity. They're already at a kind of a setback from the moment of birth. And an example of that is my daughter was doing a preschool in her home. And I asked her one day, I said, out of all of the moms you've interviewed, how many of the children have no health issues whatsoever? And she looked at me like kind of strange, like, what a strange question. I said, it's not a strange question. So what's the answer? She says, well, actually, they all have a health issue. They either have a learning disability or a health issue. I said, yeah, that's where we are today. And so it's a compounded effect. So mom and dad have been into these risk factors without realizing what they're doing. And then they conceive and have a child who has a greater hindrance to their immune system. So we have a lot of parents watching today that are here to say, okay, AJ, what do you got for me? How can we help our children today? One, we need to recognize some of these, symptoms that they're showing are actually an immune system issue. Mm-hmm. When we have bumps on the arms, when we have, inability to follow a command, we have a lot of things going on. Starts with the gut, which I'm glad you mentioned the H. pylori. Mm-hmm. Everything starts in the gut. And yet, how do we recognize, and then how do we help that child overcome immune issues? And like you said, they're going to school. The greatest, bacteria, petri dish ever. And we put them in school, and some of them don't have an immune system strong enough to be in a classroom with other kids. So that was a lot to ask of you. So I don't know where you want to start first, but let's give it to the parents. What can we give them?
Well, you're right. We got a little bit to unpack here. You're right. As far as a dangerous place, I would say probably the schoolhouse, second only to the hospital. Now, yeah. Stay out of the hospital. Okay. But we got to get the kids in the schoolhouse because we want them to be able to read, and be able to write, want them to be able to do mathematics. Later on, we want them to learn about history, science. They're there to learn. And it all starts off with mom and dad.
Right.
It starts off with mom and dad before mom becomes a mom and dad becomes a dad. Their habits and their nutrition prior to conceiving is going to be part and parcel to the product that is turned out some 9 months later. So if again, we think about this in advance, a lot of these things are preventable. Now, here I am 25, 30 years ago, starting to work with really concentrating hard on the immune system and what can impact it. But again, even going back to the 50s, when my grandfather contracted prostate cancer, I've had cancer on my mind for a long time. And so after, 50 or 60 years of thinking about it, looking around, mixing with some pretty smart people, it occurs to me better not to get the cancer.
Right.
Okay. That's where really my thrust is with the development of a product that I call Beta Kids. And so, like everything else we've done with this ingredient, we want to put it to the test. We've done the test tubes, we've done the petri dishes, we've done the mice, we've done, the other, large mammals. Now we want to put it into adults. We've done that. Ultimately, now we come back and we want to start putting it into kids. You really don't know unless you test it. So we've had to date at least a half a dozen, 6 off the top of my head, double-blinded placebo studies concentrating on young children and zeroing in on not just one thing, but one thing kept popping up, and that is upper respiratory tract infections.
Oh, that's
how many kids do we know that, they got the runny noses, they got the coughs, they got, all these sort of things. And usually it doesn't take but a couple of 3 or 4 days after they start to school, particularly if the weather is such that it keeps them inside. Now, you bring up the point about obesity. You're right. When I was out on the schoolyard, when I was in grade school, you're right. There was the one kid, and usually there was a medical problem there, diabetes or something. But as soon as we got out of the classroom to recess, we're running around like Tasmanian devils. I mean, we're running, playing tackle and what was it where you grab arms and you run a kid through and the kid tries to run through your arms. Of course, they put you in jail if you tried to do that today, because they're afraid some kid's gonna come home with a bruise. But exercise along with the good food. The kid comes home, been sitting in a classroom all day, anxious, as my mom, dad used to say. So what are you all wound up about? Yep. And they can't rest at night. They get up, they're tired. They've not been rested at night. They're tired. They get back into class. They've got this dull mind. And then on top of that, they get a cold, a sore throat. Again, all these bugs that we're breathing in all the time. Now, you got a classroom of 20 kids. 3 or 4 weeks into school, 10 of them are sick with some sort of heebie-deebiosis. Okay, they got some. The other 10, well, they seem to be getting by. What's the difference? They're sitting in the same room. They eat the same, whatever magic meat or whatever at lunchtime. They're riding the same school bus. Why is it that half have got some sort of an issue and the other half don't? I can tell you very quickly, it's the immune system. Okay, it wasn't, the bugs didn't discriminate and jump into just certain kids. You know, the virus, the bacteria, they didn't look and say, well, okay, we like brunettes today, so we're going to leave the blondes and the redheads and whatnot alone. No, it doesn't work that way. Where was that immune response at the time that they got exposed to the super spreader, whatever they were spreading that day? And so if we look at just that simple matter, if we can alter the immune response, if we can take it up a notch or two and get the immune response for the group that got sick up at least level with the group that didn't get sick, now you got 90% or better, less illness. And I'm going to tell you something. If I got sick, and I was lucky in that my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but she still didn't like load me up and sitting in the doctor's office for 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
Because when we were young, every single doctor went to the hospital in the morning and did his rounds. Then he came back to the office and started seeing patients. So we might show up at the doctor's office at 8:30, 9 o'clock. We might not get seen till lunchtime. And so imagine if my mom was working and had to take off from work to then take me to the doctor's office or whatnot. So now we're not talking about just home work and chores that my mom's not getting done. We're talking about income.
Right.
And we're in a situation today where income is important.
It is. So you mentioned, respiratory infections and colds and things like that. RSV is a huge issue, and it just frightens a lot of parents because then the child ends up in the hospital. So that's another immune issue or another respiratory issue that we're talking about. And then you mentioned beta kids. So 2 things here. Besides the lung issues, what other issues do you see children are dealing with about that the beta kids would help with? Like, are we talking allergies? Are we talking inflammation in a child? What does that look like? And you say beta kids. For those who haven't watched the previous videos, what we're talking about is beta glucan. And beta glucan comes from different foods, but it can also be used as a supplement coming from different sources as well. And the supplement is more of a therapeutic dose that can do so much more than what just eating oats can do or barley can do. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to clarify that for those who haven't watched the previous videos. So share with us, so the immune system with kids, so you mentioned the respiratory tract infections. What else are kids dealing with that a beta glucan could really make a difference with?
All the children are the same as you and I. If you rub on your skin right now, you're rubbing staph. Staphylococcus is everywhere on the skin. Same as for the kids. If you swallow, you want to stick your finger down your throat, you're going to pull out a bunch of strep. It's there all the time. It's not just there occasionally. And so in your mucous membranes, inside and out, your skin, your scalp are covered with virus, bacteria. In fact, you've got more things, as I say, in you, on you, and around you than you got body cells. And this is 24/7. The children are no different. In fact, the children, because they're in a cocktail of these things, not just what they personally would have mixing in their little universe, now they're in this multiverse. What have all these other children brought to the party? And so now their immune systems are having to deal with all of this. So the infectious disease, allergies. Okay, what is an allergy? An allergy is when the immune system has not learned tolerance to something that is foreign. Okay? There's no reason why the immune system should panic when it's around dust mite poop. There's no reason why the immune system should go into hyperdrive when you've got some sort of ragweed pollen in the air.
Right.
There's no reason why the immune system should start beating you up because you took in a whiff of some sort of peanut dust. Okay? It is the immune system that has not learned tolerance. Yes, these are things that are foreign, but peanut dust is not going to multiply and kill you like smallpox. You see it? So
Right.
getting that immune system where it's communicating properly between the cells, the organs, once that communication is properly established, it will not worry. The first time I had a double beef Whopper with cheese, okay, down in the gut, I've got immune cells that are circulating around, and they're saying, okay, there's some Hellman's mayonnaise. Oh boy, there's a real good big boy tomato. There's a great kosher pickle. The first time, everything that we take into our body, whether we put it in on purpose, whether it goes in by accident, the immune system has got to make a decision whether or not to attack and destroy and eliminate it, or just not paying any attention. So allergy is, again, one of those things that falls under the umbrella. And if we can get, again, the proper communication, because that's what it's all about with allergy, is the lack of proper communication. Of course, we talk about cancer quite a bit. Let's talk about healing processes. Now, when I was a kid, I played pretty rough and came home a lot, skin up, knees, elbows, scratches. Healing processes. If you've got a child or an adult who fails to heal quickly or fails to heal completely, these are both signs of an individual who has an incompetent or depressed immune system. You cannot heal. You've got immune cells that go in and they will examine and determine whether or not a dead and or dying or damaged cell is going to make it or not. And they'll actually produce enzymes and carve that cell out, gobble it up, get rid of it, and that then gives room for the new cells to grow in. Then you've got yet another immune cell that comes in and cements and putties. All of this done by the immune system. Now, yes, we need collagen. Yes, we need that's kind of the bricks and mortar, but it is the immune cells that are really orchestrating all this healing process. So again, I like to repeat: cancer, infectious disease, allergies, healing processes. Kids don't worry about it, but big kids do, and that's the aging process. Well, what is the aging process? The aging process is a sum total of all the insults and injuries that we get each and every day,
Right.
and how our body responds. Well,
Exactly.
the big responders are going to be, again, contained within your immune system. So those children are running around and their bodies are setting the template for what's going to be 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road. You got a sickly kid, and I don't mean to be derogatory, a sickly kid who is constantly on antibiotics, antivirals, antifungals. They're taking penicillin, Godzillin, auramycin, monstromycin, you've got an adult in the making that is never going to be healthy. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. When I was a kid, yeah, there was a little bit of sulfa drugs around. Okay.
Yeah.
Penicillin really came later. You know what the doctors told my mom? He'll grow out of it. Ear infection, he'll grow out of it. Now,
right.
Again, I had to have tubes at one point, but at the end of the day, I didn't have an antibiotic deficiency. I didn't have an antiviral or antifungal deficiency. I had a lot of advice. Well, he'll grow out of it. So that immune system is critical. And again, this all goes to getting ahead of the curve. We talk about cancer, but all of these things. I have young parents call me all the time and ask me about little Bobby or Billy or Suze or whatever. And I said, look, I'm not allowed to give diagnosis, prognosis, and prescription. But I can tell you that a lot of times there is the overuse,
right.
the abuse of these drugs. And there may come a time when you need that penicillin, polycillin, ampicillin, but you've used them so much, now you've produced antibiotic resistance.
Right.
There was a Dr. Levy, an MD, PhD up in Boston, 30, 40 years ago. Even back then, he was screaming to the high heavens about the overuse, abuse, and misuse of antibiotics. And we in chickens, in our farming, tremendous use. I don't care if it's farming of shrimp, farming of fish, farming of chickens, farming of cattle, in the milk. What does that yield? Well, if you keep up with the news now, we got polio swilling around in the New York sewage up there. We got dogs that are contracting monkeypox. I mean, disease and pestilence is forever with us.
Right.
The thing is, and again, what put me on point with where I am today is modern medicine is great, but ultimately it's all inside here. If you can't get inside here, tuned up and hitting on all 8, then everything else is just right before they plug you up to a machine. You've got to get into this mode of getting ahead of the curve. Preventive is going to have you not have to worry about, well, okay, the engine of the car just blew up because I didn't change oil on a regular basis.
Right. So we started with the risk and with the risk factors and the research that's revealing, okay, risk factors, we have this much, issues of our 44% is because of what we're doing. Now, as a parent, we're now compounding that with our kids. So the parents are already into these risk factors. They're already, have the BMI, they're eating the pesticides on the foods, they're eating the processed foods. So they're destroying their microbiome, therefore their gut, therefore their immune system. So it's a chain of reactions. So now with the kids, because that's how the parents live, they're teaching the kids to do the same. So the kids, because of their weight, in ratio, it's actually a more harmful issue for the kids to live into that lifestyle. So you've mentioned the other problem, which is the other risk factor, which should have been the number one risk factor above smoking, drinking, and BMI, which is anti-everything. The antibiotics, the antifungals, all of these medications, they're actually the number one risk factor because they destroy the immune system faster than those other 3 combined. And that's what parents need to understand. So, but yet, what can we give the parents as a takeaway? So you mentioned this in the other videos, and I love it, how we can, by adding in beta glucans, we take an immune system that's working at a 30% rate to a 70% rate. Now you have that classroom of 20 children where you said, these get sick, these do not. Now we're increasing the these do not to 70% of the room, to 80% of the room. If we can encourage the parents to look into beta glucans as an actual supplement for their children, and not just feeding your children well, which should always be number one. Sure. We have to eat real food. And we have to eat food that still looks real, not in a box or a package or has so many ingredients that you can't even understand, but real food. And yes, it's okay to give your child an apple instead of a something gooey, sticky, liquidy in a tube. It's okay to have an apple. And I always, growing up, my mom always sent the healthiest lunches, and I so envied everyone else because they had the Twinkies and they had, all these graham crackers. And it's like, oh, can I have just one? I just want one. I'll trade my apple for anything, but my mom was so adamant that we needed to eat healthy. And so we were never at the doctor. We were never at the doctor as a child. And it wasn't until I went away to college that I realized, oh, this is why you don't want to go to the doctor, because then I was on my own and making my own decisions. But as a parent, we need to empower them with the information. Okay, so your specialty is beta glucans, and we just call it glucans. So how can the beta glucans as a supplement help this mom and know that she's doing well with her child? Because there's a lot of products out there. Okay, this is a veggie pill, this is a fruit pill. There's a lot of things out there, but what about beta glucans? I feel like you're on the cusp of sharing with parents the best information they could ever take away from this video and any video they ever watch to protect their child's immune system.
Well, we figured out that we can take and establish a dose per body weight. We can do it for a cat. We can do it for a dog. We can do it for a bird. We can do it for a human. We can do it for a horse. We can do it for a chicken. Why don't we create a dose that's appropriate for those children that are not capable of swallowing a small capsule? So that's what gave life to Beta Kids. We made this real soft, squishy little lozenge, and it's a little bit different than I would say the typical gummy. We find that a lot of gummies are pretty chewy, and a kid could swallow and have problems and choke, or but with these, I mean, they melt and disappear very quickly. But they have the right amount of beta glucan for, say, that 3 to 6 year old who's in that range of getting ready to go to preschool or kindergarten or first grade, and where they're going to be most exposed to these external challenges. Now you mentioned the gut microbiome. I think it notes mentioning that beta glucan is actually a form of fiber.
Right.
And as you know, the good gut bugs enjoy munching on fiber. And so as the beta glucan is passing through the gut, taken up in what we call the Peyer's patches, that's how it gets through the gut wall to the immune cells to start with, that excess material is really going to be enjoyed by the good gut bugs to keep them healthy, to keep them invigorated. So it's a win-win. We realize, your B cells, which give rise to your antibodies. You hear a lot about antibodies being produced with vaccines. Well, the B cells that are responsible, 80% of those live in the gut.
Right.
So when you are improving gut health, you're improving that microbiome, that environment, so that those immune cells are getting exposed to this. That means they're going to do a better job of producing antibodies. Now, without getting too complex, there's actually 5 different kinds of antibodies. You mostly hear about IgG, or immunoglobulins, okay? That's what's produced one vaccine, one antibody. Like if you take a vaccine for pneumonia, you get a particular antibody. You take a vaccine for polio, you get a particular antibody. Those two antibodies don't fight the same thing.
Right.
We also make a couple of other antibodies. One is IgM, one is IgA, and they're non-specific. Do you guys have sand spurs up there where you live?
Only if we go to the beach.
Every time. Okay. Think of a sand spur. It sticks to everything. Yeah, I don't care. You walk through, you look down at your pants, you got 20 of these little things on there. Well, think of that as an IgM. If it sticks to, whether it's COVID, whether it's pneumonia, whether it's strep, staph, it does not allow that bug to then do what it does to create infection. And so when the body is doing a particularly good job, whether it's from the B cells in the gut, the neutrophils that are circulating, your your natural killer cells that are examining cells on an individual basis to see if maybe there's cancer or maybe there's herpes hiding in there. All of these things together ultimately produces an extraordinarily healthy person. And you want to start as early as you possibly can. So using beta kids is the way to get these kids out of the gate early on. And of course, some of the big financial savings, because you're not one of those parents that's having to get out of work and take the kid to, the doc in the box or to the pediatrician. Shoot, you go to the emergency room. Nowadays, you may sit there for hours at a time,
right,
and never get past a nurse. But I don't want to slam the medical profession, but let me tell you something. Nobody is a better advocate for you and your family than you.
Right.
And so you need to look in the mirror, like I say in the morning, and say, well, I'm going to do what I can do to help prevent my children from getting in harm's way, just like you wouldn't want them playing in the middle of the street.
Right.
You also don't want them easy prey to disease and pestilence.
Exactly.
And when they fall down and get hurt, you want them to heal rapidly. They get on a bus and some kid in front of them just opens up a package of Planters peanuts. You don't want them going into anaphylactic shock.
Right.
All of these things, again, fall under the umbrella of the immune system and its proper response. And that's what the beta kids helps to do. It helps that immune system communicate properly, making sure then that the outcome is the best that it can be. So,
okay. So you mentioned from 3 to 6 year olds. So is that the prime age for that dose?
We have a lot of adults that eat them like candy.
Okay.
It's just a fun product. It's a tutti fruity flavor, and they taste good. They feel good in your mouth. A friend of mine, he's got to be 88 years old now. When I first came out with the product a couple of years ago, he lives down in the Orlando area, and we were visiting, and he's one of the smartest guys. As I say, he's got more degrees than a thermometer. And we're sitting there talking, and I handed him the package, and he popped one out and ate it. And we continued to talk for an hour or so. And we got ready. I had to go back to the hotel, and he said, well, here, when he handed it back to me, it had 2 left out of 30. I mean, again, adults, and in fact, I've actually considered putting a little bit higher dose range, because again, it's based on body weight. And you talk about, the kid being overweight. If you've got a 3 to 6 year old that's close to your body weight, they need more exercise. Okay.
Yeah. So the beta kids, how would a parent dose those?
Well, we typically tell them one a day, because there's a wide range of weights, we understand, between a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Right.
But what we've done is we've selected a dose that would be appropriate for that range. And so if you've got if you've got a 16-year-old that's eating, then obviously one would probably not be an optimum dose for them. But the typical 3 to 6-year-old, I would say 1 per day. Ultimately, I don't want people to have to sit down with a calculator and calculate, well, how many milligrams, does my child need to have? So we kind of put it right in the middle of a range.
Okay, so parents have 7 and up year olds. So where should they go? Should they go to the beta glucan 100, the beta 100?
Obviously, if you've got an older child that cannot swallow a capsule,
right,
and then of course they can stick with the beta kids, and maybe they need to take one day to the next one. People say, well, how will I remember? I said, well, look at the calendar and give them 1 on odd days and 2 on even days. Just keep that way you can remember. But once a kid is slicing pieces of meat and eating it, it's a 100 milligram capsule is very small. It's about the size of an Excedrin capsule, or mean, by this time they're eating all kinds of things anyway, so it should not be a problem.
Good to hear. Is there any side effect that parents should be watching out for?
No. As I say, this material is probably safer than the water that you drink. I mean, that's not necessarily a brag either, particularly if you're in some place like Detroit. Sorry, but and even if a young child, and we sometimes get a call, even if a young child were to plunder around and find the package and eat the whole pack, not a problem. All the ingredients in it are completely safe, plant-based. We added a little bit of vitamin D because we know vitamin D is important for a lot of reasons. We add a little bit of vitamin C. So we put a little bit of additional materials in there, again, because we know we're going to get a little bit additional immune bounce from that beta glucan, as well as the side benefits of those materials. A lot of times parents don't let their kids ever get out into the sun. So that little sprinkle of vitamin D can be beneficial.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the vitamin D and the vitamin C, because I was just kind of going back and reviewing this book, the beta glucan, and we'll put a link to this also. But he mentions about how, there are thousands of beta glucan products out there on the market, and just for sales or competition, companies will just add random ingredients like, hey, this is beta glucan plus we added A, B, C, D. Now, and he talks about very specifically how that's not necessarily proven to improve the effectiveness. It's not even been proven that it actually is good for this, product, or to take long term. But what I love about this is why you're on my YouTube channel. This is why I am having this conversation, is because everything you put out there is backed by studies. Now, people may say, well, earlier you said 6 double-blind placebo-controlled studies. That's actually a lot. When you have most products on the market do not have a study backing it up that study actually works. They will say, well, the studies say beta glucan will do 1, 2, 3. And therefore, if we add in, coffee to it, we will get a stimulant at the same time. So we're going to sell beta glucan flavored with coffee. And there was no study to prove that was a good idea, but it's a sales thing, So I don't know if you thought about, lacing it with coffee for a stimulant. Maybe you should think about that. And that just came off the top of my head. But I love how everything you're putting out there is backed by an actual study. And to me, as a nutritionist, that's incredibly important. As a mom, that's important. As a grandma, that's important. But most moms don't even know to think about that. They're just like, yeah, but my friend sells, and it has all of these other pretty flowers and everything in it. So that must be good. Not necessarily. Maybe it is good. Maybe it's not. But is there a study that actually can verify that that's been tested on its for itself? So thanks.
Absolutely, Annette, and you hit on some very strong points. The food supplement industry and associated industries are not as tightly regulated as big pharma. Now, we get inspected quite a bit in our manufacturing facilities, but when you go to the dollar store and you
Yeah.
buy your vitamins and minerals, or you go to big, GNCs and a lot of other things. I got nothing against any of these companies. Generally, these things are filled with ingredients that are the cheapest they can find. And of course, most of those ingredients are coming from places like China. Nobody is testing these things.
Right.
They're not stopped at the border. Whatever's written on the side of the box or the bag of the barrel, they look to see if it matches up with the shipping information, and they pass it on. If I, on the other hand, ship something to, let's say, Croatia, my distributors in Croatia have to pay the Croatian government several $100s, and the Croatian government is sampling every shipment that I send to verify what it is. They're looking for heavy metals, they're looking for bugs, but they're also verifying, the safety and benefits of the product.
Right.
This is not happening when stuff rolls in from the US. If I ship product to Canada, and some would argue that maybe they aren't our best friends. Again, my distributors up there have to go through a cascade of government intervention, government, I don't want to say interference because I don't consider it interference, but they go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. We don't have that. We pay for it in our tax dollars, but the FDA is not down there at the pier checking either food supplements, ingredients, cosmetics, all those things they're responsible for. Seafood. Now, here's another thing. If they do check the seafood, as an example, they're going to be finding high levels of mercury, high levels of antibiotics and other compounds that have been banned here in America.
Right.
So when you go out and you buy your bread, you buy your milk, you buy your orange juice, and you read on the label, fortified with.
Right.
Let me tell you something, darling. Those ingredients are not being manufactured. There hadn't been a manufacturer of vitamin C in America in over a decade. And so you have to be very, very conscious of where you shop, and don't be fooled by, as you're describing, all the flowers. I call it label candy.
Yeah.
And we got every element on the periodic chart in this bottle. What else? In fact, I actually sell to a company that has a product that's got a whole bunch of stuff in it, and their motto is, if you take this product, you don't need anything else. And so I'm giving a lecture to a group, and they asked me about that. I said, well, the only question I got is, if you don't need anything else, why y'all got 2,500 other things that y'all selling?
Yeah.
They didn't ask me to come back.
Yeah. All right. Well, we just need to wrap this up. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing today. It is so important for these parents to just have something that they can trust and know that it's going to work. And that's what I love about what you teach and what you do, and how you have helped to formulate many of the products that, for preventing of cancer. So we have kids that are dealing with a lot of health issues, but yet as a parent knowing, hey, I'm going to give you this beta kids, or I'm going to give you this beta 100 because I'm investing in your future. I'm going to help you today, but I'm more importantly investing in your future. And I try to teach people that. And those who are just considering to have babies, to conceive, I recommend a 2-year time between now and the date of conception so that we can really get your body healthy so that you can have the healthiest child possible. I used to just say, give me 9 months. And I realized, okay, we need to back it up some more. Now I'm back to 2 years. Like, give me 2 years of building up your health, and so that you can conceive and give that child the best opportunity possible. But most people watching already have children or grandchildren. So now we give our child or a grandchild what it needs to, increase that immune response, which is with adding in beta glucans. Not to mention the diet is always paramount. The diet is always the most important.
Yeah.
Because that's happening, 3, 4, 5 times a day. And that is affecting the immune system directly as well. So any closing words?
I would say for all those, I call them helicopter parents, they're always hovering around over their kids, making sure that if they drop a toy, they pick it up and wipe it off before they let them put it in their mouth. Take a little pressure off. Take a little pressure off. And again, the good food, the good water, the good air, plenty of rest. I don't think kids really have that much stress early on in life, but say your prayers, cover all those bases. But then just like you need to floss and brush your teeth, need to do a little something extra, for the immune system, because you want that young child to run through all those flaming hoops early on. Because once they get up into grade school, they get up into junior high, they get into high school, you don't want them losing 2 and 3 days, 2 and 3 weeks, because they didn't build up a good, strong, competent immune system. So get ahead of the curve. Let's prevent what we can prevent, and just everybody have a happy and blessed day.
Right. All right. Thank you so much. We talked about school kids, but it also goes for homeschool kids. A lot of the parents that I work with, they're homeschool parents, but yet they still go to these group events. They might go to a CC meeting or a homeschooling event, and then their kids come home sick. It's like, so if you're homeschooling, you are not exempt from what we've just said today. I'm just throwing that in there at the end just to make sure you realize, hey, I don't go to send my kids to public school. I say good for you, but you're homeschooling and you're still exposing your kids to groups and group activities. Yeah. So thank you for watching today. And as always, I appreciate these words of wisdom from AJ, and we will have links to everything down below. So check out those links and you can get those products. And thank you so much, AJ. And for those of you watching, thank you for letting me share with you God's recipe for excellent health, which includes supporting your immune system. But always remember, God loves you, and he loves you with an everlasting love. And he's loved you from the moment of conception. All right. Thank you, AJ. Till next time.
Happy day. Be safe.